Hello everyone, Dr. Joey here, and I am back, and today we're going to discuss Relief Therapeutics and what happened to the Aviptadil trials. We're going to go right into it without much delay and discuss if there is in fact life after Aviptadil for Relief Therapeutics, or if this is the end of that stock. Well, I know some of you have wondered what has happened and why I've been gone for so long, but don't worry. We're going to touch on that and discuss a lot more in much more detail. Well, as I said, I don't want to delay or tarry very much, so without further ado, let's get it. Relief Therapeutics. Is there life after Aviptadil? Let's go straight to the elephant in the room. What happened to Relief Therapeutics lately? So far, the results that we've received from the I-SPY trials and from the active 3B/Tasico trials have not been what we've expected. They have not matched what we were told to expect, and they have definitely not matched the previous research and previous trials that were done regarding Aviptadil. So what's happening? Before we go straight to all of that, I would like to first look at the status of Relief Therapeutics as a company, and let's see what's next for them if we were to remove Aviptadil completely. For their financial status, they still hold more cash on hand and debt, which is somewhere around 45 million in Swiss francs. They still have the GEM subscription funding if they need extra cash runway, and they've just approved for more authorized share capital to be increased. They still have the wild card that they could be aiming to buy any other company at any given time. And they don't have any revenue generated yet. However, I'm going to discuss later why that's not necessarily a bad thing so far up until now. And in the future, they have a very robust pipeline that is loading up and looking very tasty. In short, they're in a very good position as a young holding company. As for NRXP, let's just combine this subject with what happened to my videos, and obviously that is the other big elephant in the room. The important thing to know so far is I'm back. That's right, I'm back, and the videos will soon be back too. I just had to take them down, do a little scrubbing and a little doctoring on them first, and then I will be reposting those videos, and I will be subsequently making many more videos as originally planned. So what happened? First, let me be crystal clear about this channel. This channel discusses opinions. This channel does not intend to state facts. This channel does not give financial, medical, or any other professional advice. Anything stated on this channel, even if it sounds like fact or statements of fact, is still just an opinion. Furthermore, the things discussed on this channel may or may not represent how I feel about a subject, stock, person, company, or organization, etc. Therefore, you should only watch this channel for entertainment purposes only. Finally, any decisions you make are on your own and with your own responsibility, and you do so without my influence in any way. By continuing to watch this video or this channel, you are consenting to all of the above. And please note that most of the content shared on this channel is public information and things that anyone can research for themselves. Even if it seems like sometimes inside or special knowledge is being revealed at times, usually there are sources cited on the slide to show that the content is just public knowledge that was found with simple internet researching. Where is all of this coming from? Well, apparently some people thought that some of the information I shared in one of my previous videos was stated as fact. Despite me clearly stating that I have no idea about the topic in the end, and I was just raising a theory that had already been kicked around for some time online. They took this supposed fact and began disseminating it online and citing me as the source of the idea. I was then contacted by someone that this supposed information had affected in some kind of way, and I was contacted and some legal terminology was involved in the discussion. Therefore, to protect myself, and as an obvious act to further clarify that I did not intend to create a false narrative or spread any untruths or mislead anyone, I removed all of my videos except two. Those two videos I left because I know they did not deal with or touch on the topic at hand that was sensitive. There will be more on this later, but as for now, let's get back to the presentation at hand. So what we have here on screen is the pipeline, which also lists the peak sales estimates for the different drugs that will be sold by Relief Therapeutics. This is from the Valuation Lab's report that came out in February of 2022. When we compare that with the Valuation Lab's report from October 2021, we can see several key differences, among them being, in particular, that the RLF 100 IV formulation that NRXP is the partners of for the indication of COVID-19 induced ARDS, we see that the difference in the estimates of peak sales that they would receive now from February of 2022 compared to in October 2021, if, presumably it had come to market sooner then, is $250 million in difference. Then when we look at RLF 100, the inhaled formulation for the prevention of COVID-19 ARDS, we see a difference of $600 million. And then for pulmonary sarcoidosis for RLF 100 inhaled formulation, we see a difference of $100 million. Combine that all together, and when we look at these three indications and three formulations of RLF 100 with NRXP as the partner for Relief Therapeutics, we see that there is a vast difference of $950 million that has been missed or wiped out from the peak sales estimation from October of 2021 to February of 2022. And I am not saying that this is anyone's fault in particular, or the blame or doubts or whatever hangs on any organization, company, or individual's heads. This is just what was estimated by Valuation Labs for the peak sales. And so we can see that there's quite a bit of money that is now missing from the estimated value for these drugs. But if you notice, what is still remaining are some of the APR valuations, and those have not changed a bit. Namely, the APR TD011, which is going to be for EB. When we look at that drug and the estimation of peak sales being 900 million Swiss francs, I just want to show you how big that estimate is. How big is the big profit for APR TD011? It is 2.1 billion Swiss francs that they're expected to get from 2026 to 2030. That's huge. In fact, let's look at Valuation Labs a little more, and let's look at some of the things that they are estimating and the effects it's going to have on Relief Therapeutics' share amount. When we look at the stock price for Relief Therapeutics, and if things go according to plan, which means the launching of ACER 001 for UCDs this year, and then for MSUDs in the future, and then if we look at the go-like for PKU, and then the APR TD011 that I talked about, and then I know I talked about at the beginning of this presentation, I wanted to look at RLF without Aviptadil. So now let's reinsert Aviptadil into the equation, because I think, in my opinion, that RLF 100 may actually be much better suited for non-COVID ARDS. You've heard me talk about previously on this channel that there is a difference, in my opinion, between non-COVID ARDS and COVID ARDS. I know that's against what some people may believe, but that's okay. We're discussing opinions here. In my opinion, there is a vast difference between non-COVID ARDS and ARDS. So therefore, missing the COVID-19 induced ARDS designation was not really that huge of a deal for me as an investor, and my opinion as an investor in Relief Therapeutics. That was not really the money for Viptadil like the non-COVID indications will be. That's where it's really at, in my opinion. And when we look at if RLF 100 were to be approved for EUA by FDA for COVID-induced ARDS now, according to Valuation Labs, it would only make a difference of 0.004 cents per share. So that's the answer for some of you who may be wondering why Relief was not really pursuing it much more, is because after a certain point you have to look at the risk versus reward, and you look at the valuation that it would actually add to the stock share price. So for those who are gloom and doom, who are all sad with their heads in the sand like an ostrich right now, get your heads up out of the sand, okay? Are you really going to be depressed for 0.004 cents per share that would have made a difference for? I think not. When you look at it this way, I think this really puts things in much better perspective, or I hope so, for many of you who are still invested like I am in Relief Therapeutics. Now for fun, let's just look at the indications that I have listed on the screen. If all of those except for the FDA approval for COVID-induced ARDS, alright, then that would have an effect, supposedly, of Relief Therapeutics' share price of being around 33 cents a share right now. So I hope that that helps you to kind of see more of a valuation for Relief Therapeutics. Now I know many of us got in at a much higher rate. Many of us was wanting that moon date. Many of us was wanting all of that. But we're going to discuss that in a little bit also, because I think there's a huge misconception on some of the fundamental basics for how some people think stocks are valuated or how they change in price. We're going to get into that. First, I want to look at the pipeline that Relief Therapeutics has. For some of you who are on the Discord, and shout out to the Discord group, by the way, and I will be posting their link in the description of this video. For those of you on Discord, I posted a picture showing me having the Voltaren, or the North American version of it, holding it because I picked it up at our Walgreens, and I just wanted to show everyone these are real products that are actually on the shelves out here. Alright, it's not just stuff that's on paper that we don't know if it exists or not. And so for APR Research Group, they bring in a net profit of around $5 million per year, which is great. They're in the green, they're in the positive. And so you have to look at what is their products they have now, plus what are they about to be launching that's going to add value to that. Nexodin is something that has been out there for a while now as an AOS spray, and it has several nice peer-reviewed journal articles about it. And I'll be talking about APR specifically in an upcoming video. But then they have the Voltaren, then they have Cambia, which Cambia, I have there that 2026 was the original expiration date, but they're learning evergreening processes to 2039 right now is what we're looking at. And then you can take a look and see some of the other things that are listed there, especially Aviptadil. Once again, I want you to look at, I have listed there the non-COVID ARDS, plus the other indications there they expect to establish around 2023 and 2024. Then we go back to APR with the Centenox that's expected to come out soon. Now, when it comes to Viptadil, once again, I just want to stress, I hope that you can see why not getting this with the COVID-19 induced ARDS, why that was not such a big deal for Relief Therapeutics. Now, for maybe another organization or company that might be banking on it a lot more for some revenue, that might hurt. I don't know. I'm not going to comment on those things because these are just my opinions, but even then I'm going to steer clear on discussing certain elements of other organizations. I will just say for Relief Therapeutics, I don't think it's that big of a deal, and there's a lot more robustness in their pipelines that they are really looking forward to. Let's look at some of the main revenue generating products that are under APR's brand. When you look at Cambia, what I mentioned, it is still the first and only FDA approved NSAID specifically for migraines, and that is very big. And the thing about APR, they have not had the type of publicity or marketing that they could really be capitalizing on up until this point. So that's what's going to be the nice engine rev for them, is that starting now and going forward, we're going to really see them ramp up some of their products and get those things out there to market and get a lot more value from them. And so when we go to the next slide here and we look at the product portfolio, you can see where these different things are and where they are in, whether they're still in trials or if they're about to be at registration stage or at marketing stage. Now down there towards the bottom three, you see that there are a couple of orphan designations there. And what we're not told about the APR story that I really think is fascinating and is one of the most overlooked aspects of them is their ability to really capitalize on something that has very low cost of production. And what I mean by that is this. And again, this is public knowledge, so I'm not, revealing anything special. I just want to specify that. And APR and Relief has not had any problems anyway with anything that I've said, but I just want to make sure that I do that for my own protection going forward. But what I really like about APR and respect with them is that they have used the AOS spray, and they've been able to use that type of AOS product, which you have to think, if you're producing the same product but using it for multiple uses, that is fantastically going to reduce your cost of goods sold. It's going to reduce your operating expenses, as you might think when comparing another similar company making another similar revenue generating drug, but they're making two different drugs for two different indications. This is usually what you get, but when you're talking about a pharmaceutical company that is so smart, they're able to market and realize the value of making this one drug, but using it for multiple uses and then marketing it as such and getting different approvals for multiple uses. This is where you really get to save money and really get to add value as the company. Now, don't get me wrong, there's going to be different formulations of that same drug for the different indications and uses, but the fact is you're still using the same drug, and it's just a minor adjustment versus changing, the processes to produce a whole new different drug for a different indication. When we look here at APR, I just wanted to bring up to everyone that APR is going to be coming out with the Go-like, as we all know, but that Go-like or Go-like, however it's properly pronounced, I've heard it as both, but that's one thing. That is not the actual PKU drug they're coming out with. That's going to come later. You see, there's a novel dosage of a treatment that they're working with Meta Healthcare on to come out with a different drug. Now, this drug has not yet fully been disclosed. And I'm showing my sources on the screen so you all know, again, this is public knowledge. But Meta Healthcare is working with APR in developing this drug. They do a certain aspect of development for it, and then APR takes it over and continues to develop it more. And this is something else that's great with them. The same kind of deal we see worked out between Relief Therapeutics and Acer Therapeutics. APR is often on one side or the other working with other healthcare organizations as well, so they are able to expand their reach and their profitability by saving money and collaborating with other companies and other organizations, or taking their already approved drug to whole new levels. From my understanding, this drug they're going to come out with for PKU is fantastic. It's already been approved, it's already been looked at, and that's all I'm going to say about that. So, just to put it all in perspective, APR has PKU Go-like that is already about to come out. Then, they have this drug for PKU that will soon be coming out. And they are applying, not just creating a drug and putting it to market, but they're actually putting their different types of technology on these drugs, and that's what's making it different. That's what's making it marketable. And that's what really generates revenue, because you have an already approved drug or already approved drugs in your pipeline that you're applying your technology to, and then it's able to market as a new drug itself. So let's look at Relief Therapeutics now as a whole. So they're going to be having for UCDs and MSUD their combination with the Acer product. Then when it comes to PKU, they're going to have APR, which is coming out with the Go-like, which is a food for special medical purposes. And that's different than their drug for PKU that will be coming out, as you see here, combining with Meta Healthcare and making this drug that will be coming out later, and that's going to be the actual drug, okay, for PKU. So Relief Therapeutics is going to have their hands all over here in the urinary dysfunction or disorders group, from UCDs to MSUD to PKU. That's, to me, I'm sorry, but that's just amazing to me, and it's something that I'm in for the long run on. You've heard me say many times before, and I'm going to reiterate that fact. I am in RLFTF for the long run, at least until 2025, 2026. Unfortunately, this recent event that has happened with not getting the FDA EUA approval and looking like we won't get it for COVID-19 induced ARDS, which is, as you all know, something I was not really keen on from the beginning anyway, because I just feel that ARDS from COVID-19 induction is totally different than regular ARDS, and I think that many healthcare providers are seeing that now, and most would have already agreed with me on that. But we're really seeing Relief Therapeutics be able to cut ties with that now and focus down on things that's going to be revenue generating and profit turning for the future. This again is just to show you that FDA has granted orphan drug designation to that APR-OD 031, which is the PKU drug that is coming out soon. And they've already granted orphan designation to the EB. If you remember, I discussed in a previous video about how much monetary value comes with those orphan drug designations. So now, let's look at Relief Therapeutics as a whole again. You've got a lot of monetary value coming in from their orphan drug designations for pulmonary sarcoidosis from Viptadil, from the non-COVID-19 induced ARDS that they already have, and then you have the orphan designation for EB drug from APR, and then the orphan designation for the PKU drug, as we see here. Then you have the orphan designation for Acer 001. So think of how much money that is and multiply that, and you can do the math. Now, for APR, as I told you, they are looking at taking drugs that already are approved or have a high chance of approval and applying their technologies to it. And those technologies that they're applying is the Teclo technology, and they're also applying the physiomimic technology. Again, I'll discuss those in more detail in a forthcoming APR video specifically. And look at that, I forgot about the Haley disease drug as well, already receiving orphan drug designation. It just gets better and better, in my opinion, as you go deeper and deeper into the research and studying about these companies that Relief Therapeutics has already acquired and has under their holdings umbrella. Okay, before we go, let's talk about how to properly evaluate a biomed or biotech stock, because there seems to be a little confusion in that. Now, when it comes to the fundamentals, there are several different metrics we can use. I'm a value investor, which means that I really get into the valuation of different stocks. I like to buy stocks at a discount value and then hold it for the long term. This is the way that Warren Buffett, his style is, but it's totally different than many who are technical investors or who look for the short term. Now, one of the main things you have to do, number one, is to value your stock that you're investing in and come up with your own valuation method, or what fundamentals you see as the most significant. For me, one of the most significant is the enterprise value. And the formula for that is the market cap, which is, remember, the amount of total outstanding shares multiplied by the actual stock price. And then you're going to add that to the debt that the stock company holds minus the cash they have on hand. Now, for the 150 million, you'll see that figure there. I use that as the multiplication of only 3 cents for Relief Therapeutics multiplied by 5 billion shares, which is the total amount that they had before this last general meeting, and not only outstanding shares, but also in any kind of shares period that was under the authorized shares umbrella. That means if they released every single share they have, I multiplied all of that, multiplied by only 3 cents. And then I used the actual figures underneath that line right there, you'll see, with 143.85 million. That's the actual true figure currently with Relief Therapeutics. And that used only the 4.11 billion shares that are currently outstanding multiplied by 3.5 cents, which is their current stock price as of today on 6/12/2022. Now, when we look at that, the enterprise value for Relief Therapeutics currently is $168.85 million. But I like to go a step further and multiply all available shares that are authorized, and then you get 175 million for the enterprise value. Now, let's look at the PB ratio, which is the price to book value. The price is going to be whatever the current market cap is, and you're going to divide that by the assets minus liabilities, also known as the shareholder's equity. When you do that, you get either 0.828 or 0.795, depending on which figure you want to use. Again, I like to just go a step further and try to use all their authorized shares whenever I calculate something, so that way there's no surprises and I'm looking at the value of everything within a stock. Now when we look at this, as you can see here, both of those numbers are significantly under 1. Now, and by the way, total sales or revenue for the last trailing 12 months is what TTM means. You can see LTM for last 12 months or TTM for trailing 12 months. And, just stock lingo. So, when we talk about this, the PB ratio, anything under 2 is good. And so, anything under 1 is great. And you can see that the PB ratio currently for Relief Therapeutics is significantly under 1. So, they're doing fantastic. Now, price to sales ratio, that is going to use the same figures of anything under 2 is good, under 1 is great. But you can use that a lot of times when you don't use the PB ratio. And I use the price to sales ratio here because I'm not going to talk too much about terminology in this video because I don't want to bore you, and those who are interested in it can watch the valuation video I'll be coming out with soon. But PS ratio works very well for some organizations, and when we look at the PS ratio for those interested, it's currently at 45.5, which is horrendous. But when you know they don't have any sales, actually any revenue, then that makes sense. The reason that's not a bad deal is because when their annual review comes out for next year with all of the balance sheets and the operating and cash flows and such, it's going to be an amazing jump. And next year we're going to see such an increase in price just organically that it's going to be ridiculous for some of us who have held for that long. When we look at it right now, PS ratio is 45.5. No analyst wants to touch that. But then when you add in the revenue that that APR pulls in, which is $5 million on average every single year, you add that in, that brings the PS ratio to 18. You add in Acer 001, only the relief territory, that's going to bring it down to 10. And then when you add in the Goliki for the 2023 and plus added in what they're expecting for the 2022 release of it, that's going to bring it down to 5.27 for the PS ratio. So at that point, we should see PB and PS ratios significantly low. That's going to bring in a lot of analyst attention. By then, I'm expecting that their RLFTY ticker will have stepped up another notch probably. Their cost of goods sold is going to be ridiculously low. I talked about why, especially for APR. And then for the WACC, which is the weighted average cost, that is what some know as the hurdle number or the number that you have to get over. Relief is already on track to be over that. Their valuation metrics look fantastic. What actually affects the value of a company, this is what value investors and people who look at fundamentals like myself are actually interested in. We're not too much into the technical stuff. We're interested in the fundamentals, the actual numbers, all right? And looking at the balance sheets, the consolidated cash flow sheets, all of those things. So what actually affects the value of a company, number one is revenue, right? Like actually bringing in revenue. Number two is how much debt they have. Number three is how is the debt financed? Because you can only gain funds one of two ways. You can go into debt by loans, or you can distribute more shares. And there's another model where you can have it convertible, like Relief does, where they actually have a debt to shares conversion, and that's the reason they buy or purchase things with shares, the same as Exxon does. And then later, we're expecting them to do a stock buyback program the way that Exxon does also. And then later in the future, when they want to buy or make another purchase on a company, then probably they'll release it again as shares. But they're using shares as a currency, if you notice. And then you have the cost of goods sold, or the weighted average, cost of the capital, the operating cost, depreciation, amortization. This is when you get into the EBIT or EBITDA. Again, I'll go into depth about that in a future video. And then you look at the market cap. But this is what some people get hung up on. They only look at the stock price and the outstanding shares, and they think that's the value of the company. But as we saw in enterprise value, that's only one part of it. You also have to look at the debt the company holds, the cash they hold on hand, those kind of things. Now, we also want to look at the sentiment of the company, because how people feel about the company does affect the actual value. It's not really a true indicator of intrinsic value, but it does affect it to a certain degree, and that it affects the market cap sometimes. Now let's look at what actually affects or moves the stock price of a company. Stock price, and this is what technical investors are interested in, and they look at the charts and patterns. And for technical investing, there's the concept that the market follows certain paths or charts or patterns and balances out over time. And so for them, well, number one, for everyone, for stock market prices, they're going to be affected by market makers who are going to quote the price or put the price, initially for what they think that the stock is worth. And what goes into that is a large complex system. I can make a video on that later also, but for right now, just know market makers. That's where it starts with. After that is the market cap. Obviously, depending on the number of outstanding shares, because they can be diluted or they can be bought back, that's going to significantly measure on the stock price. So market cap, the financials of a stock. All right, every quarter we're looking forward to seeing if they beat or if they miss the revenue and the earnings per share. So the financials affect stock prices, definitely. Also, the sector or industry that they're in the cycle of the market is going to affect the stock price. For instance, you can be a mediocre oil stock right now and you're still booming because that's the sector that's hot right now. Or you can be a fantastic airline stock and you're going to be down right now because that's the cycle we're in right now. That's a horrible sector for right now. But for a value investor like myself, I'm buying up some things. For instance, Azul Airlines is something I absolutely love. Now, when it comes to the perception or the sentiment of the stock, that weighs in heavily for technical investors and for your current stock market prices. They actually apply a score. They quantify something that is qualitative, like the stock market, their perception or sentiment on a particular stock. Catalyst. Obviously, we know that. What is the saying that they say? The cliche is to buy the rumor, sell the news, right? And so we know how important catalysts can be. We've all seen big increases or drops when a catalyst releases. And finally, just the natural rhythm or patterns and charts of the stock market and the particular stock you're looking at. And this is for technical investors specifically who look at things like candlesticks and head and shoulders and those kind of different patterns. So now I hope that kind of delineates for you the difference between what affects the stock price and what affects the actual value of the stock. I'm looking for the value of companies because I'm a value investor. So for me, what Relief Therapeutics looks like currently, their fundamentals look great. The long term looks strong. I'm not a huge fan about the new authorized shares recently, and that's one of the things that the reason why with the Discord group they've put out the questionnaire or the survey. We're trying to see how many people hold what number of shares. For those of you who have not filled out this survey, please go do it. It's anonymous. We don't know who's doing it or anything like that. So especially me, I don't. But we're going to look at that and see if we have the right percentage of shares according to the articles of the association for the company, and see if we can't start pushing our hand a little bit on getting a vote on different topics, or even presenting certain topics to be discussed. Because if you don't know much about AAs, go read up on it, and legally they have to honor that. So if we have the right number of shares collaboratively, then definitely we can start forcing some answers or getting some topics discussed openly with the company. And yeah, I always look for dilution. I don't like it, and if it's going to happen, then I want to know why, or I want to know why are more authorized shares even being presented. And I think that's a good thing for all of us to kind of inquire about. But that's it for this presentation, and I hope that I haven't lost too many of you just because I had to take certain actions that I deem were necessary and appropriate. Anyway, that's it for me on this video. I'm Dr. Joey saying I'll see you next time.